Okay, the next one is on microthermite reactions, and there is a conspiracy theory that the microthermite reactions were the ones that facilitated the
collapse of the World Trade Center towers.
Okay. All right, go ahead, sir.
Okay, it's actually nanothermite, but okay, just this is a picture of World Trade Center number 7. I'm just going to focus on that one. There's actually 3 buildings that collapsed on 9/11. World Trade Center number 1, World Trade Center number 2, and World Trade Center number 7, better known as Building 7 or WTC 7. These are different pictures of it from different angles. It was a 47-story building, roughly half the size of WTC 1 and WTC 2, and it collapsed presumably due to fire, like all of them did. Never mind.
Is this a 7?
Yeah, that's 7.
The one
that's
in the
7.
middle.
Right there.
Okay.
And next to it are the Twin Towers.
Okay.
And according to this report, it collapsed due to fire along with WTC 1 and 2, but you know, they're different variables, but nonetheless. Okay, all of these fires, out of all these fires, guess which one caused the building to collapse? These are different pictures of different buildings that have caught on fire. None in the history of steel structured buildings has ever collapsed due to fire. This one was a more recent one right here. It's the Beijing Mandarin Hotel. It was literally like a torch. And out of all of these, this is the one, World Trade Center number 7, that had those sparse fires that actually contributed to the collapse.
But wasn't the Mandarin a lot younger?
Yeah, it was, but I mean, the point is that it's just another footnote, I guess you could say, in the collapse of, or rather the building
They're not
fires.
supposed to collapse or what?
Well, they're designed not to collapse due to that, due to fires, and no building since 9/11 or before 9/11 has ever collapsed due to fire. And you're gonna have to forgive me, I'm a little nervous here, but whatever. Okay, these are, I converted them to GIF files so that way they could, you could actually see how the collapse is going down symmetrically, straight into its own footprint. There's squibs that are there, but you can't see them. Also, there's pyroclastic clouds that are forming. I'll show you that in just a little while.
What
The bottom line is, squibs are basically high-pressure ejections of material that are caused by the building collapsing onto itself and also from explosions.
All right.
This right here, this how building implosions work, is important because what it shows is that all of the core columns need to be severed in key places, timed perfectly in order for the building to come down symmetrically into its own footprint, into the path of most resistance, basically, unless, of course, you're eliminating the material that's under it. Now, if there's normally with a building fire, you should expect an asymmetric collapse if there was even going to be a collapse, because if you cut like the side or whatever it may be, the building will tip over and maintain its structure. And I don't have pictures of other buildings that have collapsed due to like earthquakes and what, but they maintain their structure and fall over. So anyway, it's just interesting. Okay, so here we have a comparison and contrast between WTC 7 and versus a controlled demolition on the right-hand side. Yeah, and they look identical, basically. And they both come down at free fall speed. In the case of WTC 7, 6.5 seconds, which is literally free fall speed. And what that means is that if you drop the ball from the area, the height of it, it would come down at, as if it had nothing standing in its way. How could the building come down if it, if it doesn't have, if it has all the mass of the concrete and steel supporting it, which is normally there, of course, to fight the gravitational pull of the earth, and also to keep it, from succumbing to weather conditions and whatnot. Okay, so from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, AE911truth.org, these are the different observations that one would make seeing a controlled demolition. In this case, WTC 7, Building 7, was a 47-story high-rise. It was not hit by an airplane, so you didn't have the factors of the jet fuel nor the impacts that contributed to its collapse. So it's one of the big mysteries, right? Of course, NIST says that it was fire. But in any case, and it took many, many years for them to make that determination. So you've got some of the key features. I didn't include all of them because it was just too much for the one page. But the rapid onset of collapse, sounds of explosions, although I don't have any evidence to support that right now, but there were. Symmetrical collapse, meaning that it went right into the path of greatest resistance where all the steel and the concrete was, and it did so at free fall acceleration 6.5 seconds. If you saw towers 1 and 2, they went down to about 11.9 seconds when they're about 110 stories tall, if I got that correctly. So you go ta-gun, ta-gun, ta-gun for every floor, it's already done with by the time you're like, what, 1/10 of the way. Too fast. Okay, so they look like they were imploded, meaning they fell into their own footprint. The purpose of doing that with a controlled demolition is you don't want to hurt the surrounding structures, the other buildings around it. So the whole point of using a controlled demolition is so that it would fall directly into its own footprint. None of the building materials would expel outward. And in the case of Building 7, it fit that profile completely and perfectly. There's expanding pyroclastic dust clouds. You saw that earlier with the comparison videos where all the clouds are forming. What's important about that is they're only formed in controlled demolitions. Some other ocean-like phenomenon under the sea, but also primarily with volcanic eruptions. It was not an asymmetrical collapse, which I've already covered, which means that if there were fires kind of spread all throughout the building, if they caused one of the columns to fail, it would lean in that direction. It would cause a collapse. It wouldn't be straight down into its own footprint. And unlike other high-rise buildings, which were much larger, the fires were much larger and hotter and longer lasting, they never collapsed yet. WTC 7 did. Okay, so go ahead.
But on those, the ones that never did collapse, did they have buildings next to them that collapsed? Because I mean, it's also a phenomenon that it had two buildings next to it that had issues. You don't think that had anything to do with
that was one of the big arguments. That, well, you know,
it
was hit. This is a weird thing. You would think that they would stick to that explanation, just like they would stick to the WTC 7 explanation of there being diesel fuel in the basement. You know, all these people said, well, this is the reasons why, and they stuck to those for a while. But in the end, this said just the fire did it. You know, there was damage to the building. That wasn't it. The planes hit the towers. That wasn't it. Jet fuel brought it down. The fire brought it down. So you'll have to ask them this, why they're saying that. I mean, when everybody else thought it was something else. But okay. Anyway, molten metal seen cascading from the South Tower. The only reason I bring this up is because it's evidence of thermate. Okay. And the thing is, you have to understand, it looks kind of small, but the building is humongous, and that area right there where the molten metal is cascading out is like a huge amount. So, you know, if you watch the videos later on, hopefully you'll do your own research, you'll realize that that's like a ton of molten metal. What's causing it, you don't know, but there's also, and you can't see it here, streams of what would be aluminum oxide, which would be vaporized as a result. Thermite reaction creates aluminum oxide vapor, which is really a solid, but of course with a high heat, it's just going to vaporize off. And of course it creates molten iron, but I'll have to get to this chemistry in a minute. I'm just explaining all this so you have an understanding of where I'm coming from with the idea that it was used to bring down the buildings. Okay, now the molten iron looks a lot like molten iron right there, which is the top right there. And the argument that this made, the explanation was they said that the molten metal, which they didn't deny that that's what it was, they said it was the aluminum from the planes mixed in with office furniture and whatnot. Yet down here you see how the molten aluminum looks silver and whatnot, and yet with Dr. Stephen Jones, who's a scientist who's doing this research, mixed it together with office furniture and he couldn't get that same result. However, he could make the iron metal that was molten maintain its the molten structure and resist cooling down too quickly by throwing a lot of sulfur in there. So we'll move on. Okay. Let's see.